G'day viewers, my name's Graeme Stevenson and I'd like to invite you to come on a journey of creativity and learning and adventure through the series Colour in Your Life. There's an artist in every family throughout the world, and lots of times there's an artist deep down inside all of us as well. So grab your kids, your brothers, your sisters, your aunties, uncles and mums and dads and come and see how some of the best artists do what they do. Well, g'day viewers and welcome back to Colour in Your Life. Well, we are up in the South Island in the north part of New Zealand at a place called St Bernard. Did I say that right?
More or less.
Good. There's a lot of different ways of saying it. And I'm with today with Jan Thomson. Jan?
Hi Graeme, welcome.
Welcome to the show. Fantastic area, it's so beautiful. You should see where Jan actually lives. It's just at the base of the most magnificent mountain range, very close to a place called Lake Rotoiti. Is that correct? I'm
Yes.
sort of trying to get those Maori names right. But just a beautiful, beautiful place. And Jan has a studio literally up in, that's the best way to describe it, in the mountains,
Yeah.
isn't it? Moved from Wellington 6 years ago?
Yes.
And just literally decided to get out of the rat race, didn't you?
Yeah.
To come up here. Your parents were very talented people as well.
Yeah, Dad was a photographer who did all his own developing.
Yeah.
Colour before it was sort of a mainstream thing to do,
Yeah.
and Mum was a painter. So yeah, quite a creative background.
And it can sort of combine in the end. And then you actually got to a stage in your life where you actually had a bit of a health scare.
Yes, after I was lucky enough to have my first solo exhibition, and I thought this is going quite well. It was almost sold out, and then the next week I was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer, and suddenly was going in quite a different direction to what I'd thought, which involved a couple of big operations and chemotherapy. And it made me realise that life's very short and very precious, and there's no time to muck around. So I stopped being a house painter and took up my smaller brushes, and yeah, this is where I am.
Yeah, you get sort of one chance, and I think that you're a great example of that. And obviously clear and free many, many years later, and forging ahead doing exactly what you love doing in life.
Yep.
Obviously, because of the influence of where Jan does live, you're going to be doing a watercolour piece for us today on Lake Rotoiti. Yep. We'll basically start on that and let you do what you need to do, and then, as I said, you'll see some shots today of where this glorious area actually is. But I'm going to step out of camera as I normally do, and I'm going to let Jan take you through the process of putting one of her pieces together. Okay, Jan, well I can see that you've actually drawn this out. What type of paper are you using there?
It's Fabriano Artistico Rough, extra white, and it's 600 weight, which I like because it doesn't buckle, because I don't stretch my paper first.
Great idea.
So that's what I use mainly for landscape. Sometimes if I'm painting portraits or whatever, I use a hot pressed smooth paper. Okay. But this is my favourite for landscape.
And obviously you love this area, so... Yes,
this is one of my favourite painting spots down by the lake. I love painting down there because the light changes all the time, and you never know whether you're going to get big storm clouds or like this day when the sun was out on the mountains. So first of all, I gather my reference material, and I've done a wee sketch down by the lake of the area to give me some idea of the colours that I'm going to use, the direction that the light was coming, just to remind me when I get back, so that I've got that. I usually print out a photo to remind me of what I was looking at, although I won't follow that slavishly. It's just a reference material to...
I think that indicates to people how beautiful the area really is.
Yeah, it's lovely, really lovely, despite the sandflies.
Yes.
And I usually have a shot on my iPad as well, because I find with the backlight on the iPad that it's, gives you a much truer idea of colours and things. So I normally have that sitting there too. And sometimes I've just done a quick sketch of how the trees look to me, the colours that I used, whatever too. So I have all those things sitting by me as I get ready to paint.
Fantastic.
So that's my reference material. Then I'll think about what colours I'm going to use, and I usually paint with a very limited palette. I'll quite often paint a painting just with 3 colours. I usually mix my own colours. I don't like having pre-mixed greens or darks. I don't slavishly use any particular brand of paint. Today I've got Schminker, Winsor & Newton, some Art Spectrum. Yeah, so you end up with favourites in the different brands.
Yeah, I find that, you know, some reds and some yellows are better than others, and
Yeah.
some of them have got too much gum arabic in them, and, you know, so you sort of wind your way through and find what you need in the end.
Yeah, you wind up with your own favourite ones, don't you? I give all my paints a bit of a squirt just so that they're all ready to go, and also in case I decide to use another colour as I'm going along.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is just wet the sky first and get that ready to go.
The thing that's very important to you is light. I mean, you emphasise
Yeah.
that quite dramatically in what you do. But the thing I love about your work is the subtlety of light as well. You know, there's these really precious moments that you have in your pictures that just, you know, tell the whole story about just one small area.
Well, it's funny, I think more and more the actual subject is becoming less relevant to me, and the way the light hits something, it can be the most boring, mundane, everyday object, but if the light is spectacular, then it will stop me in my tracks and I want to paint it. And I must say, I've got a very sympathetic husband when we're driving along who has actually started being able to spot things himself now.
He's a good man.
He is a good man, yeah. So
And I think that there's the sense of abstract to your work as well, that feeling that you're putting behind it.
Yeah, well, more and more too, I'm attracted to work of other artists who have very abstract backgrounds, people like Richard Schmid, you know, where the focal point just leaps into focus and everything else is out of focus, because of course that's how we see the world,
Yes.
the things at the sides we can't see.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself of that, not to paint the whole painting in focus all the time. That's one of those little things. Okay, so once the shine's gone off that, I know that it's more or less ready to start painting. So I'm just going to mix up some raw sienna. Because it was fairly early morning, this shot, it was quite a gentle sky and it had a wee bit of yellow lower down, and then the top part was cerulean blue, that lovely eggshell blue. So I'll just get a wee bit of paint ready for that.
And you're actually using little separate pots to mix the colour.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to slop in some raw sienna near the tops of the mountains.
Yeah. Obviously, you've turned the picture upside down. So.
Yep, I quite often paint upside down.
Yeah.
And I find drawing upside down is very good if you're working from a photo and it's something quite intricate and you're having doubts about the shapes or the spaces. If you just flip it upside down, draw it that way, it's almost always a better drawing than it will be up the right way.
Yeah, your brain
it just turns off the left side of your brain.
Stops it,
Yeah. Okay, and then I'm just going to come into that with cerulean.
Very, very subtle.
I'm not too worried if it runs down to this part because there will eventually be a tree down there. So.
Yes.
And then I'm just going to leave that to dry for a few minutes, and then I'll tip it back up the other way.
But that's the extent. I mean, your colours are very, very subtle, particularly watercolours.
Yeah, I quite enjoy painting more intense colours, depending on what the subject is. Some things obviously are much stronger colours, like some of my birds don't want to have everything too subtle and light. So once that's more or less dry, I can turn it back up the right way again. And hopefully that looks like a nice subtle early morning sky. While I've got those two colours ready, I'm just going to pop some of that colour into the lake and the river, because obviously that would be reflected in. So with a smaller brush, I'm just going to pop in a wee bit of that cerulean.
Yes.
Now it's interesting, on the lake you often get this lovely little light line. I don't know why that is, but on what would be the horizon, I suppose, of the lake, there's often just a wee light white line, so I'm just going to make sure I leave that. It just seems to show you that it's lovely, still, calm water.
Yes.
And I'll just drop a wee bit further down here.
And that's really, in a sense, what watercolour's about. It's sort of having the patience to step back.
Yeah. Well, watercolour is just painting with water.
Yeah.
So you've got to allow for the fact that the way the water behaves.
Yeah.
And if you let it go and do what it wants to do, it's fun to paint with. But if you fight it and try to make it do things that water doesn't want to do, then you run into trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to do those mountains in the rear. I may have to go over some of these later on and darken them up a wee bit if I don't think they're strong enough. Next I'm going to paint Mount Robert. So I'll probably paint wet on dry for this, but I'll add water as I go and just manipulate the paint a bit, because the sun's just coming up in the morning and hitting it with this lovely golden light. This is why I paint watercolour. I just love the way it magically paints itself.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? And I think the beauty, particularly with the area that you're in and is that plein air is such a fantastic way to lead your life.
Yes.
You know, you're out in the open. I mean, days like today, I mean, it's glorious.
Yeah.
Obviously, you get different drying times with the sun on your work, depending on where you've located yourself, but you can't beat being out there with those colours.
So while that's still wet, I'm going to put in the bush colours underneath. I'll paint it first with ultramarine blue, and then I'll drop raw umber into the paint while it's still wet. I don't use pre-mixed greens. I find for New Zealand greens that none of the green tubes of paint are actually anything like our bush. And when you look at our bush, there's a lot of red, a lot of purple, a lot of orange, so I tend to just let the paint mix on the colour rather than trying to mix it up. I know there's a row of trees that goes up the side of the mountain here, so I'm just going to drop that in. And there's a big rock slip on this face which has gone right down through the bush.
Yes.
And just to make sure I get the edge by the lake nice and clean, I just turn it on its side.
Lovely.
Because I want to get that lovely white strip that I was talking about before and keep that nice and clean. Okay. And while that's wet, I'm going to drop in some raw umber.
Yes.
That just makes a lovely subtle green. It mixes itself really. If I feel it needs a bit more mixing, I'll just give it a squirt with my squirter, but I think I'm happy with that. While I've got those colours mixed up, I'm just going to drop in the reflection of Mount Robert in the lake, which you can see along here. So I'm just going to tip that on its side.
Yep.
So it's the same colours, it's just raw umber and ultramarine blue.
Yes.
Have to remember to keep that nice bit of white strip again.
Yes, it's a bit like a mirage. You're just condensing. You're condensing the light into it's a large space into a smaller area.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's about it for the reflections for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'll probably go onto the mountains on the other side, which are the St Arnaud Range.
Yes. So how often would you get out to plein air paint? Is it every weekend? Or?
Not as often as I like. Because I have the studio open to the public, I have to be here quite a lot of the time. But I am travelling more and more around the South Island to go out and paint, take workshops. I go off to farms occasionally to paint on site, and yeah, I'm never going to run out of subjects down here.
No, not in the least. But I mean, but in saying that, that would be great because you do small groups, and you'll actually go to other places.
Yes.
To take people as well. But even the location you have here, which is spectacular, there seems to be plenty of accommodation.
Yes.
St Arnaud for a start.
Yeah, so I do run workshops here in the studio for small groups.
Yep.
People often come up for the weekend and we'll either go out painting or paint here if the weather's not right. But I also really enjoy travelling to other smaller, particularly rural places to run workshops in spots where people wouldn't normally get access to, maybe having an art tutor come along. So that's very satisfying to do.
Yeah, absolutely, that'd be fantastic. So if somebody would like to go on one of these great trips with you, or just come to St Arnaud to your studio, which is beautiful, your website address?
It's janthomson.co.nz.
Great.
Thomson without a P.
And I would suggest that this is such a magnificently beautiful area. Great way to spend part of your holiday as well, I'd say. So we've gone on to a bit smaller of a brusher again, have we?
Yeah, and I'm just letting it run into where the trees are going to go.
Just still letting the water do what it needs to.
Just letting the water paint it, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, while it's wet, I'll just flick it out the other way and do the reflections while I've got the colour mixed up.
You've got that white line or that space between it anyway, so there's going to be no run.
I'm not trying to have every single reflection, and it's just giving the idea of the fact that the bush is reflecting in the lake. And I'll just let the lake actually run down into the grass a wee bit here and there too.
Okay.
Right, I think I'm going to tackle these trees next, so I want some nice thick paint.
And you tend to mix your own darks as well, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And the darkest dark on this will be burnt sienna, ultramarine, maybe with a little bit of alizarin. It wasn't actually as dark as that. That's why I don't really like working from photos, because they do lie. Everything looks bluer and everything looks darker.
Yeah.
But I know that the area is quite dark, so it won't be exactly the same as that. And I did myself, while I was down there, I did a little bit of a sketch of how I was going to make the darks for these trees, and it was just ultramarine with burnt sienna dropped in it. So hopefully that's going to work, and we'll see what happens. So yeah, lots of nice thick paint, and I'll be painting wet on dry for this.
Once again, sort of using the side of that brush.
Yeah. I just tend to have my old favourite brushes like everybody does.
Have you got any brushes that you've really mashed up over the years?
Yeah, I have.
They just look like they've died.
Well, I had this lovely set of brushes, which are Lucy and Barry McCann brushes over here.
Okay.
Please don't tell Barry how filthy mine are, because his are always very clean.
You've had a bit of a trekking life on a motorbike. You've been around Australia and New Zealand, seeing all the beautiful scenery involved in that as well.
Yeah, our old 1950s Velocette. It's great because we can go off-road in places that you can't normally get to.
And you actually have a thing you call a motorbike kit.
I do. My motorbike painting kit, yes, or my walking painting kit.
Yeah.
Just a wee bag, a tiny sketchbook,
Yep.
quite a big palette because I often like to mix up washes.
Okay.
What else have I got in there? My water container,
Yes.
a black drawing pen,
There you go.
one brush, and my signing brush in case I do a really good one on the side of the road,
Okay.
and a pencil,
Fantastic.
and that's a viewfinder.
Yeah.
These are great when you're painting outdoors because you can simplify things. A lot of people freak out that there's just too much information out there, but if
Yep.
you use one of these, it'll just simplify the scene and you know exactly what the confines of your painting will be. I find often if I'm painting a mountain range and I'm not using this, it's very tempting just to try and fit in one more ridge or one more peak, and before you know it, you squash them all in. So this is a great way of stopping yourself from doing that. So yeah.
It just goes to show that you can simply step outside the house with very little.
Definitely.
Yeah, and have a great time.
You can see from my rubber that it is used outside, it's covered in grass stalks.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my motorbike kit,
Fantastic.
which I try to have with me all the time.
And the funny part about it is you don't necessarily have to have a motorbike to use it.
No, you don't. You can use a bicycle, or you can be walking, or it can be in the glove box of your car.
There you go.
Right, while that tree is still wet, I'm going to slop in the foreground wash on the side because I want it all just to run in together.
Okay.
So I'm just going to slop that all in. This is all just rough grass down by the creek here, and I just want it all to run in together. One of the things I love about the focal area, which I guess is here in this photo, is that everything's kind of leading to it. The creek's banks are leading in, the mountains are leading down to it. And while that's wet, I'll stick in a bit of raw umber maybe, because it's all just this rough grass. I just want to give the idea of that. And I'll also put in a bit of these darker areas that are around the banks and stones and things. For that I might use ultramarine, alizarin, maybe just a wee bit of burnt sienna, just to give the idea that there's a wee bit of a bank there.
Yeah. Really, it's about not getting too precious and just, once again, letting the watercolour do what it needs to.
Yeah, we also only see the focal point in focus when we're looking at something. The rest of the stuff, if you were standing on the lake, down by there looking at the lake, would be out of focus. So I have to try and remember that when I'm painting. I don't want a hard line running straight out of the painting because that's not what your eye sees when you're standing there. Everything's kind of zooming in towards that middle part, so I try to keep the corners a bit fuzzy. So I'll just block in a wee bit of these trees.
But you can see with the softness of the colours that you've got, straight away it's starting to focus into the piece.
Yeah, so again I'm just going to try and sculpt the shapes of those trees. I try to remember to leave the bird holes in the trees for the birds to fly through.
Yes. Now I just wanted to bring up some of the other pieces that you've done over your career, and one of those is Au revoir Wellington. It's a fairly poignant piece, isn't it? I'm out of here. But it's a beautiful piece. I really love the browns in the sunset. Another one, Fossil Hunter, which is off the east coast of Canterbury, and you said down there that they have many large fossils of extinct crabs and shellfish.
Yeah, it's quite a famous area for collecting fossils.
Yeah.
So that was my husband walking on the beach collecting fossils while I was painting. Okay, I'm just painting away here with a mixture of ultramarine with cadmium red, just to give an idea of some of the rocks.
So you're just making an impression with the...
Yeah, just an impression of rocks. Yeah. You'd be looking, if you were standing there, you'd be looking over the top of these rocks anyway. You're not looking straight at them, so it's just to give the idea that there's something there. Right, I think I'm pretty happy with that side. So now I'll carry on the other side of the creek, do those wee shadows that I can see along the bottom of the bank.
You're really just starting to put the highlights in.
Yeah, and just making it a bit more 3D.
Yeah.
Because to make the light, you can put the dark in just to pop it out.
Yeah. Apart from the fact that you're a very accomplished watercolour artist, you also work in acrylics and in oils as well. And just showing the Lake Rotoiti painting, which is in acrylics, which I think is just a beautiful piece. And then one that I really like of yours is the Pen Caro painting, and it's of the harakiki plants with this beautiful blue coastal outcrop at the back, and that's an oil painting, so you can see the diversification of what you do.
Yeah, I did paint in oils for quite a long time, but because I paint a lot in the national park, the problem of cleaning brushes and terps or thinners and having to tip them out is not a good one when you're in a wilderness area. So I've just been trying to slowly change to acrylics, because just tipping out water is a lot better.
Definitely.
So I'm just adding a wee bit of texture now to the foreground, just to give you the idea that it's actually a bit closer to you.
Bits of grass.
Bits of grass, yeah, this is just really rough grass down by the lake. Okay, and I think just a little bit of splattering with a bit of cadmium red.
Makes the picture look a little busier.
Yep, and a wee squirt, just let those run a bit. And maybe just a couple of blobs of a pure cadmium red.
There you go, look at that.
And I think that's pretty much it.
That's fantastic.
Apart from a signature.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Okay, guys, fantastic day. Thank you so much, Jan. That was absolutely wonderful. What a beautiful piece. I mean, you can sort of see that you don't have to force your way into a picture to be able to create just a really beautiful scene. And Jan showed us that today with quite wonderful expertise as well. So now your workshops and your tramping around the country, I think that's really cool what you do. And it's if you haven't been to New Zealand before, or even yet come to New Zealand and been part of the painters here, the artists here, I mean, it's a pretty huge society that you've got as far as artists are concerned, isn't it? Your website once again?
janthomson.co.nz.
So get in touch with Jan, because the scenery is spectacular. The people are fantastic. They really are. I mean, New Zealand is a very, very generous people, and we've loved being here every time we go over here. It's been fantastic. If you want to come and see more of what we're doing and more of the shows, you can come to colorinyourlife.com.au and see what's going on in there. And as always, guys, Facebook and YouTube, lots of great things going on. We've had a fantastic time in New Zealand again. We're going to move on. We're off to the States shortly to do some work over there. So, but as I always say, coming from this beautiful place, remember, when you get a chance, make sure you put some colour in your life, and we'll see you from New Zealand at some other stage.
See you later.
Bye, guys. Bye now.